Good morning to you. It is Thursday, May 30th at 9:58, day 1000 of allergy season. Hope you're doing well. Hope your morning's going well. It is simply beautiful in central Indiana today. The weather is excellent. And I've got a few thoughts for you in the form of a QuickCast. Kind of a big news cycle the last, 48 hours. I don't know. Some stuff coming out that's Purdue centric, which is kind of unusual this time of year, but it's nice. Still nice to have something to talk about and think about. So I want to talk about a little bit of that. One of the big things, one of the biggest stories to me right now is the fact that we just heard last night, came out, Mark Sears pulled his name out of the NBA draft and he's coming back to Alabama. That's really noteworthy for Purdue because Purdue had just agreed to a home and home with Alabama. This next, I think it's late November. I believe it's late November. Purdue will play Alabama at Mackey, and then they'll return. They'll go to Tuscaloosa the next year. One of those rare, quick home and homes scheduling things. But Purdue's done a really good job with basketball, really loading up the schedule late in the game. Painter and Babinski and co. have done a really good job of making the schedules challenging. And here comes another one. If you don't know this, I'll read this to you. So Mark Sears returns to Alabama along with just a host of transfers. You've got Big Uncle Cliff from Rutgers, Aiden Holloway from Auburn, Chris Youngblood coming from South Florida, and Houston Mallett from Pepperdine, along with, don't forget, Grant Nelson is back at Alabama, and Latrell Wrightsell as well. That's a lot of guys that have played a lot of minutes in college basketball, a lot of good minutes. A lot of Alabama fans have reason to be hopeful coming off of Final Four, and now they bring back one of, if not the best guard in America. So what's this do for Purdue? Well, it prepares them right away for a chance to show how good they are right out of the chute. The last couple of years, let's call it the Zach Edey effect if you really want to, because when Zach was a sophomore, Purdue started flexing their muscles in the pre-con, right? We've had 3 straight seasons where Purdue's been undefeated in the pre-con. They've gone up the ranks by beating really, really good teams. Some would say elite teams, some blue bloods in that group, of course, and Portland in, was it Connecticut, where that Hall of Fame, it must have been Massachusetts, Hall of Fame basketball event, the Cheese event, where Purdue beat Villanova in North Carolina, and then, of course, in Hawaii this last season. This year, Purdue doesn't have quite the daunting schedule that they did the previous 2 seasons as they reconstitute themselves, as the Boilers get to know each other and figure out who they are. But adding Alabama is a big deal. Some people have Alabama as high as number 1. Don't forget, some people have them second after Kansas. I think this Mark Sears announcement might move them up to where they should be. In my opinion, that's the best team in America going into this coming basketball season. So I think this really matters. There's a lot of things that are going to be a good test for Purdue and that Alabama squad. I'm glad this one's in Mackey this year, just because, like I said, I think Purdue's going to be figuring itself out as they go into that game. I'm excited about seeing this version of the team. And speaking of this team being excited, looking ahead, as you all know, Daniel Jacobsen made I talked about a little bit in the last QuickCast that Daniel Jacobsen made the U18 USA basketball team. And in the course of doing it, he kind of threw down a gauntlet that he's going to be a really, really good player. I joked about it on Twitter, but I think it's a really big deal. If you look at the effect of the whole team, what does it mean to Purdue to have 2 7-footers that are maybe serviceable, maybe starter quality right away? It shakes things up a little bit. I told you I didn't think Jacobsen was going to start 2 weeks ago when I gave my thoughts on who was going to start right away. Jacobsen, though, from what it looks like, could be a starter type of guy right out of the chute. Just like Zach Edey was, he was a starter type of player. Granted, Painter split their time as freshmen, right? Right away, it was the Space Coast tournament that introduced us to Zach Edey. I think his first time he touched the ball, if I remember correctly, he turned and he dunked the ball. kind of a foreshadowing of a guy who was going to make his presence known to the college basketball world. We just didn't know how much, right? We didn't really get that. But the Zach Edey effect is pretty great. It's been pretty great for Purdue because when other teams are kind of getting ready and trying to figure things out, Purdue's had this security blanket to lean on. They don't have to worry about installing a bunch of things that are difficult to run with a bunch of freshmen or, young guys. Even when Lawyer and Smith were new starters, they had this guy that could dump in there and he could get an easy bucket versus almost anybody, especially in that pre-con when you're not playing versus those really, really good teams. When you're tuning up in Mackey Arena, for instance, this Zach Edey effect is something that we may be diminishing a little bit as Purdue fans. He's been extremely important to Painter and to the program in the fact that he's just so steady and so good on offense that you can get a bucket when you need it. If you remember, you take yourself back to the Wayback Machine before Zach Edey was playing at Purdue, there were times where it was tough to get a bucket. Even for an offense as efficient as Purdue's, it was still tough at times, even with other 7-footers. Zach Edey's very special. So what does this do to Purdue next year? Well, Braden Smith getting ready to have Jacobsen as a guy he can dump the ball to probably looks pretty fun. Smith's got to be pretty happy with that. And if you look at the best point guards in the Big Ten last year, Braden Smith leads them all in assists per game. He will again lead the Big Ten in assists per game, I would guess, because when you look at the decimation that's happened in the league, the good point guards that are gone either by transfer or going to the league, it's crazy. It's noteworthy. And I just saw the list this morning. I was reminded how much things are about to change in the Big Ten. Also wanted to talk a little bit about Zach Edey had an interview with Andy Katz. This time Andy Katz was working for the NBA.com or I don't know what his agreement is with the NBA, but he interviewed Zach. It's a very thoughtful interview. If you want to check it out, I linked it on our Twitter account. But that interview shows you why Zach Edey is special and why he continues to be a guy that you just love the fact he's representing Purdue as he goes out and takes his next step in his career. The funny thing is you read comments on Twitter and elsewhere, you still see people clad in orange that are holding a grudge and staying bitter. Illinois fans and Tennessee fans alike. I've even seen Michigan State fans. They're still bitter. But the bitterness is ridiculous to me. And the narratives are ridiculous and they're not believable. Zach Edey is what he is, but Zach Edey is going to be a special NBA player. Make no bones about that. Another basketball note that I didn't really talk about, happened 2 weeks ago, I believe, was the addition of Yale to the schedule. I know it may not seem like much, but this is something Purdue's been really good about. Even their quote unquote lesser opponents, meaning the non-Power 5 opponents. Purdue plays a lot of conference champs in these preseason games. That's a good thing. It's a good thing, number one, for your strength of schedule. It's a good thing to get you ready against a team that probably is pretty experienced. But Yale's a good addition. I know it's a bit of a tune-up because they are in the Ivy League, but still a good addition. Think about this for a second. I'll stay on basketball one more second. With Purdue adding Alabama to the schedule, you now have Alabama, Illinois, and IU as all these mercenary heavy teams, right? Teams that have just brought in a ton of NIL guys, ton of transfer portal guys. That's really the antithesis, obviously, of what Purdue's done. I omitted Lance Jones in my last basketball conversation on here on the QuickCast. Not intentional at all. Obviously, I think Lance Jones is a special guy in many ways. He's a special guy on court, special guy off court. Absolutely the perfect fit for Purdue last year. I talked about that ad nauseum, and I just glossed over it because I was looking at the Purdue natives on the roster that were graduating or going on to other pastures. I'm not going to say greener pastures. I don't think going to Duke from Purdue for Gillis is a greener pasture. So I don't think going to Colorado State for Ethan Morton is a greener pasture. I think it's another pasture. It's a different pasture, but I understand it was time too. Time for those guys to graduate and they move on. I think both of them they were almost done with their masters. They'd been on campus a long time, but you compare that in contrast to the philosophy of building your team out of mercenaries and guys that are straight from the portal. And the fact, to me, I know a lot of fans are saying Purdue really needs to think about doing a little bit more of it. There's no doubt about they probably will need to modernize their thinking a bit in the portal, especially in coming years, because everybody else is going to be old, right? College basketball is going to be something that is just dominated by 22, 23, 24-year-olds. Mark Sears is a 22-year-old right now. He'd be 23 next year. He's a fifth-year guy. He's a COVID transfer guy. He's not some weird sixth, seventh-year player, which you see so much of. But being a 23-year-old guard a couple years ago would have been really, really noteworthy in college basketball. Now it's somewhat normal. Sears isn't a guy that's physically imposing, but he's obviously developed as much as he is. And a 23-year-old playing an 18-year-old, that's quite a contest. Think about that difference. I don't know if you've ever played basketball. Somebody who's 5 years younger than you. It's a big difference. I don't care what year of development you are. As a man, 23-year-old man playing an 18-year-old who's still a work in progress, there's a lot to be said about that difference. We'll see that. You're going to see Jacobsen Harris on the court playing against Mark Sears at some point in that game in Mackey Arena, I believe. And Jacobsen Harris is about as good as you're going to get physically for a combo guard. How does he match up with Mark Sears? You're going to see there's a big difference with a 23-year-old and an 18-year-old, especially that early in the season. Like I always say, guys aren't freshmen by the end of the season if they play a lot. Like Braden Smith, by the time he reached February or March, he wasn't really a freshman anymore. He was a guy who was an experienced super freshman. Even though he was young, even though he's a bit undersized, he still was, he was well seasoned. Granted, sophomore Braden Smith versus freshman Braden Smith, huge difference. Very different player. So we'll get to see that in practice again. One more thing, final thing I want to talk about today. Football related note. This is according to, I've got it here. This is according to Ross Dellinger. Says the NCAA Rules Committee meets next week to discuss permitting schools to display corporate logos on fields and perhaps patches on jerseys. And what I thought of right away was the World League. You think about NFL practices, right? Teams have sponsorship on their jersey. This isn't a foreign idea. WNBA, I think almost every team has large sponsorship. Soccer, large sponsorship. NBA, small sponsorship. Patches on their jersey. This isn't a new idea, and somebody's got to pay for what's going on in the sport. Corporate sponsorship is a good way to do it. The only thing is, if you're a purist of college football and basketball, you're probably thinking what I am. We're just getting further and further away from what it used to be. And the good old days are going to be feel even further away in very, very short order as revenue sharing and all the new terminology, contracts are coming into their own here in college basketball and football very soon. So a couple comments from you guys. Thanks for tuning in live. Adam P says, good morning. How are you, Adam? Also saw that Coleman Hawkins has entered the transfer portal, withdrew from the NCAA draft. Yeah. So this is an ongoing conversation on Twitter. It really proves the fact that Twitter is fake. Nobody really thinks Coleman Hawkins would ever entertain a transfer to Purdue, but it keeps coming up because I think people think it's an entertaining thought exercise, and it is kind of. Coleman Hawkins, though, made it very clear there are many teams he won't go play for. In case you've missed it and you don't care about Coleman Hawkins news, that's okay. But he's not coming to Purdue. He's not going to think about coming to Purdue, and Purdue has 1,000 scholarships already full. Purdue's roster is full. It's over full. We still haven't heard resolution to that. What's happening? How Purdue's gonna resolve their issue. My guess is that since it's been so quiet and we're this late, we're not late into the summer, but we're this late into the off season. It feels to me like somebody's just going to say, yeah, I'm not going to have a scholarship. They're going to get an NIL that makes it so they don't have to reach in their pocket for their school, which is great. And the roster will look exactly as you think it's going to look. Maybe there's a surprise coming. I can't tell you. But it sure doesn't look like it's in the form of any of those freshmen going to an academy to get ready. So, yeah, Greg Amanda says hello. New specs and facial hair looks good. Yeah, I don't think my facial hair or lack thereof looks good at all. I appreciate you lying to me, Greg. You lie so good. I think the glasses are serviceable. They're not my favorite. But the facial hair, I just look like a fat old baby, so that's not the best look. I don't think it's when you think of your look. The problem is my options are slim right now. What to do where you're heavily balding and you I guess it's good that I can grow a beard. Let's look at the positives. We're gonna focus on the positives, but I appreciate it, Greg. Chris Beeler says, saw Caleb Love is returning to Arizona too. Not sure how he still has eligibility. I don't know. That is crazy. I did not see that. Thank you for bringing that up. Caleb Love is my age. Not really, but dag nabbit. Caleb Love played on that national championship North Carolina team, right? That's a long time ago. Man, it's crazy. College basketball is crazy. It's a wild west. You ask real nicely. I always say all you have to do with the NCAA, just make a really, really nice request and hold your hat in your hand and say, yeah, please, could I stay for another year? And they'll say, sure. There's some guys who have requested and haven't gotten it. And those are the guys I'm like, what did you do wrong? Like, what in the heck did you do to get the NCAA's ire at you? It's crazy. Dick Stillwagon says, Hail Purdue finally caught a live show. Look at that, Dick. Continues saying, we're confident in the secondary for the first time in a while. Certainly have more than just one guy this season. Purdue's football secondary is going to be excellent. Truly excellent. That is absolutely a Walters and Kane effect, but specifically Walters. Purdue's secondary is going to be great. And I mean that. And so there's two ways to look at this, that in the past happy era of the NCAA football we're in, Purdue's going to have guys that can actually shut a team down. How many times in the last decade have we had Purdue teams that couldn't get off the field at the end of the game? Regardless of a good team or a mediocre team, they just couldn't get off the field at the end of the game. Well, this team should be able to do that. They've got a lot of horses in the defensive backfield. One note, speaking of college football, EA Sports has this tier system, the way they pay the colleges, meaning I think they give a fee, kind of like a profit sharing thing to each college, depending on what tier they are. And they decided that they were going to decide their tier was based on rankings of college football teams at the end of the season. And so IU is in a tier above Purdue. It comes down to about $30,000 different payment from IU to Purdue. And I know IU needs help in football and getting the money in there. But that's a ludicrous idea that IU's football program is better than Purdue in the last decade. That is absolutely insane. And you good luck finding him. I know the guy. Even the most diehard IU football fan would say that's a crazy thing to say IU is at a higher tier than Purdue in any way in football in the last decade. Absolutely insane. And the only thing that carries them over the finish line was the COVID year when Penix fumbled the ball over the goal line versus Penn State. It's really the only thing that puts them over there. That was I don't know if you remember COVID, but that was bad. And that was an odd era for college football. If you're as old as me, you remember that. I'm just joking. Todd Singer says, putting in my vote to have a bourbon cast added to the rotation. Thank you, Todd. I think it's coming. And I think it's going to be fun, and I'm excited about it. I think it'd be fun to have Jay and Anish do it as well, virtually. I don't know where they are. When we decided to join the Believe thing, they said there was going to be a little bit more involvement. I will say that. I'm not going to throw them too far under the bus, and you can take it up with them. But where are you, gentlemen? Where are you? And Jay and I will still trade notes via Instagram, sending stupid videos to each other, and Anish a little bit. But come on, boys. Come on. Join into the summertime fun. Jump into the pool. Greg Manis says Yale is a high-level Ivy. It's not like they're playing, Brown or anyone else. It's a huge difference between Yale, Harvard, and then the rest of the league, really. And Penn sometimes, I guess they come up. Rumor is the scholarship issue for men's basketball has been resolved. Hear any details? No, I have not heard any details. I've been trying to find details. I won't say that I've been horribly focused on that, but I have not heard it as a truth yet. I have heard rumors. So I look forward to hearing facts on that. I think it was solved months ago. I'll be real honest. I don't think Painter or Babinski or any of those guys did anything public, so I'm not too worried about it. I wasn't worried about it. I just think I'd like to know the answer. But Purdue is awfully good at controlling the outside story and face of the program in football and basketball since Babinski's been in-house. Incredible. That's something we should take their hat off to him. I know a lot of people don't like it. A lot of fans don't like the fact that there's not a ton of transparency, especially during the off season. But some things don't really need to be public. This probably does because so many fans are curious about it. You got a lot of ticket holders that want to know. I just think it'd be respectful to the fans, but hopefully get something official soon. Rumors aren't official. So Chris Beeler says NIL. Yeah, that makes sense. McManus says, guys taking half scholarships may get the money of NIL. Beeler says, I believe technically they are walk-ons, but making up with NIL opportunities. Yeah, this is where there's a huge gray area, surprising huge gray area with NIL and what you can do with it. And this is a great use of NIL, not a good use of NIL, to have a roster that you keep on a guy like Waddell. That seems to me that's the guy who they would keep on with this usage of NIL and half scholarship or full, whatever. That's awesome. Regardless, that's great. And if it's, it's great. It's a great use of the NIL. So I hope that's what the case is. Todd Singer says, saw a license plate yesterday. It said, Vols GBO. Told my daughter that must stand for get beaten often. That's what I was like trying to figure out as I'm reading it. Yeah. Tennessee fans are bitter, guys, and they can't let go of it. They're kind of, they're a bitter bunch. So if you see one, give them a hug. That's what they really want. There's actually a funny picture. When Purdue beat Tennessee in Louisville a couple years ago, LBD and I are walking out of the Yum Center. And a Tennessee fan came up, and I actually published the picture because I thought it was hilarious on Twitter. The guy comes up, he said, hey, would you put me in a headlock? He says to my son, let's see, he would have been 12 then. Yeah, right around 12, 13. Would you put me in a headlock? We take a picture? And I said, go ahead. So LBD puts him in a headlock and acts like he's like roughing him up. The Vols fan was a good sport. It was hilarious. It was very odd, unusual moment, but kind of cool. So yeah, they've had a tough run, is what I'm saying. Let's see. Greg McManus is talking about Lincoln. It's funny, Greg, you probably saw this. I can't remember who it was. One of the Nebraska outlets said, with this advent of logo patches and corporate sponsorship on the field, you could see a Nebraska field with Runza on the field. And if you don't know what Runza is, you haven't been through Lincoln, I guess. But it's different, I'll say that, and it's okay. I don't know if Greg's a big fan of Runza, but my kids and I and my wife, we ate there on the way through to Wyoming a couple years ago, and I was like, okay, this is different. I got one of the things, I can't remember, they have something that's just theirs. They also have chili with a cinnamon roll, if I remember correctly, which is fine. I'm not against that. Whenever you can have a cinnamon roll in a meal, that's not bad. But they had something else on the menu, some flaky pastry pocket. Doesn't matter. It wasn't great. Yeah, Greg says runs as mid. So is Valentino's Pizza. Yeah, I my whole point, it looked dated, right? Runza looks like it's straight out of 1987, 88 inside the restaurant. Very, very old concept, it looks like to me, but it sounds like it's a local favorite. So it's always good to try the local favorites, when in Rome. So, by the way, Rome, local favorites are better because it's Italian Roman food. All right, that's about all I got for you. Great interacting with you guys. Great having a little conversation about what's going on. And Greg, I will look heavily into figuring out what to call that bourbon podcast. And I think it's a good idea. Expand a little bit anyway. I think it's going to get sleepier when it comes to news here in the next few weeks. So I'm still going to try to have a show or two a week, and that'd be a good way to do it. A little, I like to, my way to drink bourbon right now, my preference is rye, and I like it on rocks. So, maybe I'll drink it neat first and then put it on rocks. We'll see how that changes the taste and try some new stuff. But I'm a big higher proof rye guy. I like rye that's finished in barrels of other things. I think it's good balance and flavor. And a little bit older is better too, because just like all of us, we get a little better with age. Get a little bit sweeter, a little touch of balance. Hopefully, as we get older. So that's about it. Have a great day. I appreciate all you guys. God bless you. Hammer down. We'll talk to you soon. See ya.